Hey folks, welcome to another adventure exploring the world of the old Fleetway Sonic the Comic series from way back in the 1990s. In the past, I've covered a couple of prominent villains, namely Supersonic and Dr. Zachary. In this video, I'll be covering another amazing but much less well-known villain created for the Fleetway comic books called Commander Brutus, Dr. Robotnik's second-in-command. I'm excited to cover this dude because Commander Brutus is a perfect example of why I love the Fleetway comics so much. He's the kind of character you wouldn't really find elsewhere. A lot of Fleetway's writers and artists had also worked on the UK's most popular comic book, 2000 AD, home of the grimdark dystopian reality of Judge Dredd. I can't help but feel that 2000 AD's sci-fi stylings helped inspire the dark and rather fantastical world of Fleetway Sonic. Commander Brutus is basically a Judge Dredd-style villain, ripped out of 2000 AD and plonked into the world of Sonic. In this video, I want to take you through all of the Fleetway comics storylines involving Brutus, and talk about Brutus's impact on the wider Sonic fandom. Fleetway's writers were often inspired by Marvel when creating their characters. Supersonic has parallels with the Hulk, Dr. Zachary was inspired by Deathlock. How about Commander Brutus? Maybe after the first story, we can reconvene and find out the answer. Brutus was created by Lou Stringer, who happened to write all of the storylines in this video. Though Stringer was a writer, he also provided the visual design for Brutus. In an online interview, Richard Elson, the comic's most beloved artist, recounts that he tried to stick as closely as possible to Stringer's original design when providing his artistic talents to any Brutus storylines. Here is Stringer's original sketch of Commander Brutus. Another thing in the comics that always reminded me of 2000 AD are Robotnik's trooper robots. Robotnik's army was originally made up solely of badniks, but as the comic went on, a large portion of his forces consisted of these troopers. I guess they're the British parallel to the trooper robots that appeared in the Archie comic books, like this fella. Brutus is essentially a buffed up, beefed up version of your basic trooper. Now, without further ado, let's dive in. Brutus first appeared in the multi-part storyline Project Brutus, written by Lou Stringer and illustrated by the master Richard Elson. It started in issue 69, right in the middle of what I consider to be the comic's golden age. The story opens with a salty Dr. Robotnik pelting a Sonic poster with eggs and tomatoes, angry that Sonic always ruins his plans. Robotnik's session is disrupted by Grimer, his Igor-like sidekick and scientific genius. Grimer reveals that a plan, codenamed Project Brutus, is nearly complete. In Grimer's laboratory, we're introduced to the mighty shell of Brutus, a kind of deadlier iteration of one of Robotnik's fierce trooper robots. Grimer puts the finishing touches to Brutus, copying Robotnik's brain patterns into Brutus's robotic form, and with that, Brutus springs to life. Robotnik's new second-in-command. Then, we're introduced to Sonic, travelling through the Pleasant Zone and dressed in his Bob Beaker costume, a common disguise he'd occasionally adopt. Sonic ditches the disguise to go for a run, and is spotted by a scummy rat who attempts to let Robotnik know about Sonic's location. The call is intercepted by Brutus, who vows to take care of business himself. Brutus and a gang of troopers travel to the Pleasant Zone to confront Sonic. Sonic is understandably underwhelmed, and rips through Brutus's troops like he so often has in the past. An overbold Sonic rushes the commander, and is met with a mighty backhand, proving he's a more formidable foe than Sonic expected. Part 2 of the story picks up with Sonic initiating a strategic retreat to get his wits about him again. Sonic is baffled by how similar Brutus seems to Robotnik, and correctly guesses that he's been programmed to think just like the Doctor. When Brutus confronts Sonic again, Sonic tries his best to fell his foe using his speed to spin Brutus around violently with his own cape, but that line of attack proves fruitless as well. In the scuffle, Amy gets herself kidnapped by a trooper, and the ruthless Brutus is just about to order her execution when he suddenly gets a call from Robotnik. It turns out Robotnik had heard about Brutus heading out to catch Sonic without his permission and was rather fuming about it. Calling Brutus via radio transmission, Robotnik nixes Brutus's plans for execution and orders him to bring the freedom fighters to his lair alive. This part of the story ends with Brutus boasting that he's been able to do what Robotnik never has, and that is defeat Sonic the Hedgehog. Part 3 opens with Brutus parading a chained Sonic to the Pleasant Zone folk, only to receive another call from an impatient Robotnik, who's becoming increasingly frustrated with Brutus disobeying his orders. Brutus releases his annoyance with his creator by smashing a trooper with one of his signature backhands. In the ensuing scuffle, the freedom fighters manage to grab a weapon, blast Brutus and make a run for freedom. Sonic and Co manage to charge across a rickety old bridge over a valley to safety. Well, that is until Brutus reveals he can also fly and gracefully glides over too. Sick of Sonic's antics, Brutus vows to ignore Robotnik's orders and finish Sonic off right there, right then. The threat prompts Sonic to seriously lose his cool and unleash the out-of-control, super powerful and dangerously violent Super Sonic. See my video on him if you need a little bit of background about Fleetway's interpretation of Super Sonic. So we have Super Sonic versus Commander Brutus. The final part of the story opens with Super Sonic delivering a devastating blow to Brutus. Sensing Super Sonic's immense power, Brutus takes Amy captive, assuming that Sonic wouldn't charge him when he has a friend captive. Brutus was wrong. Super Sonic charges him nonetheless, smashing Brutus's right arm clean off with a punch. Brutus has one last trick up his sleeve and orders his troopers to fire a foam cannon at the crazed Hedgehog, briefly trapping Super Sonic in a super strong substance called Doom Foam. Super Sonic manages to break out quite easily though, prompting Brutus to permanently retreat back to Metropolis Zone. His energy exhausted, Super Sonic subsides and Sonic returns. The story ends with Brutus back in Robotnik's lair. He's replaced his missing hand with a blaster and is confronted by Robotnik, angry that Brutus was defeated by Sonic. Brutus, in a scathing reply, states that he's programmed with Robotnik's own brain patterns. Robotnik would have acted in exactly the same way in the same circumstances. An enraged Robotnik sends Brutus away to formulate another plan of attack. As he lurches away, Brutus reveals his ambition to defeat not only Sonic, but also his creator, Dr. Robotnik, in the future. So what do you reckon? Which Marvel character inspired the creation of Commander Brutus? According to Brutus's creator, Lou Stringer, he was inspired in some ways by Doctor Doom. I can definitely see it, with the cape and metal and the no-nonsense attitude. It's also worth mentioning that Brutus is an old Roman name, with Brutus being a former friend of and one of the assassins behind the murder of Julius Caesar, which is obviously what Brutus wants to do to Robotnik. Ooh, how Shakespearean of you, Fleetway. Brutus's second appearance was in the storyline Brute Force, illustrated by Carl Flint, which kicked off in issue 69. It's a story that doesn't actually star Sonic. The story kicks off abruptly, with Brutus leading a raid on the River City Zone to round up and capture the zone's citizens. Brutus's raid is successful, but he only shuttles half of the captives to Robotnik, sending the others to an undisclosed location. It looks like Robotnik and Brutus have put their differences behind them, because Robotnik is mildly pleased with Brutus's raid on River City, though he's slightly disappointed in the low number of captives brought back. Brutus descends to Robotnik's laboratory and picks up a new gadget he's commissioned from Grimer, a portable brain scanner capable of scanning anyone's brain and revealing their deepest secrets. Brutus claims he wants to use the device on Sonic, but turns around and blasts Grimer and uses the device on him, absorbing all of his knowledge, including the ability to build an army of robots. Armed with this new knowledge, Brutus flies over to that undisclosed location I mentioned, which turns out to be Brutus's own secret lair in the Misery Zone. Brutus gets to work building his own army of badniks, completely independent of Dr. Robotnik. And with a new army of robots in tow, Brutus plans his own raid on the Cotton Factory Zone, a zone inhabited by sheep. There's a nice little detail here where Brutus lets off a very Dr. Robotnik-esque expression. Cotton Factory Zone is under the protection not of Sonic or even Tails, but Johnny Lightfoot, one of the lesser freedom fighters based on one of the little critters from Sonic 1. Brutus's attack proves too overwhelming for Johnny to deal with alone, and Brutus forces his portable brain scanner onto the defeated Johnny's head, gaining access to all of his secrets. The key secret? The fact that a whole bunch of Mobians have been hiding from Robotnik on the floating island. Before Brutus gets a chance to launch an attack on the floating island though, he learns a fatal downside of the brain scanner. Brutus hasn't just absorbed Johnny's knowledge, but also parts of his personality. A confused Brutus starts lashing out and destroying his own troopers in a fit of confusion. Brutus flees the scene and manages to reverse the effects of the brain scanner, erasing Johnny's freedom-loving personality, but also erasing the secrets he harvested from Johnny's mind too. The story ends with Brutus declaring he'll raise an army to bring an end to Dr. Robotnik, while at the same time, Robotnik discovers that Brutus commissioned the brain scanner without his express permission. It seems like there might be a bit of a showdown between Robotnik and Brutus in the future. Without a doubt, my favourite storyline involving Brutus is Revolution, a multi-part story that started in issue 79. Nigel Kitching is the artist this time around. Revolution starts off introducing us to the dystopian lives of the average citizens of Metropolis Zone. The first caption reads, "Every now and then Dr. Robotnik unleashes a badnik attack on the citizens of Metropolis Zone just to remind them who's in charge. Sonic and his gang of freedom fighters turn up to save the day and destroy some of the badniks, but Amy notices something unusual. Some of the badniks are being destroyed by another party, a group of even more intimidating looking robots. Johnny Lightfoot correctly identifies these new badniks as creations of Commander Brutus, and the freedom fighters go to work destroying them too. That is, until Brutus turns up and wastes no time blasting Sonic into oblivion. Dr. Robotnik catches wind of Brutus's arrival and intends to take matters into his own hands. With Sonic incapacitated, Brutus lays siege to Citadel Robotnik. Brutus breaks in and threatens to blow Robotnik to pieces, but Robotnik is looking rather smug. He reveals that he's baked an emergency measure into Brutus's design, a self-destruct implant that he has control over. A self-destruct implant that Brutus has already discovered and removed. His mind is Robotnik's mind after all. It looks like Robotnik is screwed, but he's actually saved, if you can believe it, by Sonic the Hedgehog, and by Shortfuse the Cybernik, a freedom fighter who was roboticized but retained his sentience and now uses his robotic shell to his advantage. With Brutus now battling Sonic again, Robotnik manages to slink off. Brutus reveals something rather sinister to Sonic. While he was incapacitated, Johnny and Amy were transformed into badniks, roboticized. Johnny looks kinda lame, but Amy actually looks pretty cool. Sonic and Cybernik battle Metal Johnny and Amy, while Brutus tracks down Robotnik. Sonic doesn't really struggle with his roboticized buddies and frees them pretty promptly. When Brutus tracks down Robotnik though, he finds a nasty surprise. Robotnik has donned his Hulkbuster style war armor and is ready to take down Brutus personally. One-on-one, mano a mano. This is Robotnik going full on badass. He uses one of the war armor's secret weapons, a freeze ray, to freeze Brutus and smash his head clean off with a brutal punch. And with that, Brutus is defeated and Robotnik is restored as Sonic's primary antagonist. Despite the fact that Sonic technically saved Robotnik from being blasted into oblivion by Brutus earlier, Robotnik isn't in a very thankful mood, and the story ends with Robotnik redeclaring his own war on Sonic Cybernik, Amy, and all of the freedom fighters. I guess it didn't really matter whether Brutus's revolution succeeded or not. Robotnik and Brutus are bad news for Sonic. That wasn't the last Brutus appearance though. There's one more to cover, a brief appearance in the storyline Showdown by Lou Stringer and Nigel Kitching. At this point in the comic book, Dr. Robotnik had absorbed enough Chaos Emerald energy to gain godlike powers. Powers including the ability to create anything he so desired. As part of a truly epic showdown with Sonic, Robotnik recreated a motley crew of villains from Sonic's past to face him once more. One of the villains was the fearsome Plasma, a creature made entirely out of ions and electrons. Another was Commander Brutus, resurrected by Robotnik from a pile of garbage. Unfortunately though, Sonic makes ridiculously quick work of Brutus here, attacking him with a spin dash assault, forcing him to collide with Plasma and to explode. And that was the rather unceremonious last time we'd see Brutus in the Fleetway comic book before the comic's untimely demise in 2002. In all honesty, I'm not a huge fan of the trope of a bunch of villains returning but being made really short work of by the hero. It kinda reminds me of Dragon Ball GT. What do you reckon? Was Brutus's final appearance a bit of an undignified disappointment, or a nice little nod to one of the comic's finest villains? But what of the legacy of Commander Brutus? Some Fleetway characters have managed to break through and influence the wider Sonic fanbase. Supersonic and Emperor Metallics spring to mind, two characters who have featured in prominent fan games, Supersonic in Friday Night Funkin' and Emperor Metallics in Sonic Time Twisted. Brutus's legacy is unfortunately not quite so grand, but Brutus is far from forgotten. For starters, it's always great to see sketches of Brutus from Sonic the Comic's writers and artists crop up every now and then, be they the result of commissions or otherwise. Also, Brutus did make one appearance in Sonic the Comic Online, the unofficial fan-created continuation of the Fleetway series. He is one of many villains conjured up accidentally by a young amateur witch, but there's not much more to say than that. It's a really brief appearance. In terms of games, last year at the Sonic Amateur Games Expo 2020, a demo for a fan game called Sonic the Hedgehog Brutus released, promising RPG gameplay and a story inspired by Commander Brutus. I've played through and it's a pretty fun experience, though it's unfinished, and the only glimpse of Brutus thus far is during the demo's end credits, but I love to see Fleetway characters pop up in fan games. I'm not crazy enough to think that Brutus will appear in official Sonic media, but I'm all for people taking underrated Fleetway characters and adding them to fan projects. Go crazy, guys. What made Brutus so cool and memorable in my opinion is the fact that Sonic never really defeated him. Supersonic and Robotnik did, but not Sonic, making Brutus possibly Sonic's most formidable foe. And yes, I am ignoring the Showdown storyline when I say that. Also, Lou Stringer's long-term storytelling worked wonders for Brutus. Brutus could have been a one-and-done villain, but his evolution as an increasingly ambitious villain played out perfectly. Brutus boxed himself into a corner and was forced to battle Robotnik and Sonic simultaneously, and that was his downfall. As ever, if you have a character you'd like me to cover, whether they're from the Fleetway comics, the games, or any other form of Sonic media, please let me know in the comments and hopefully I'll get round to them at some point in the future, although the list is getting very long at this point. But for now, thanks for watching and hopefully I'll see you next time.